Hey guys, this is Brian with Starlite Pulp. Thanks for checking in. Tonight I've got Mr. John Fish from This is Folklore. He is a kind of a custom hat extraordinaire guy, and very much appreciate the work that he does. If you guys watch this show even a little bit, you know that I'm a total hat nerd, and so I got a hat maker on here, and I'm really happy to have him. So John, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Yeah, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm hanging in there. I'm happy to have you on. So talk to me real quick about um, how you got into hat making, kind of the journey that took you there, because I imagine it's there are so many professions out there. I mean, I'm a writer. There's not many 8-year-olds that sit there and go, I want to be a writer. A few, but not many. Most are like, I want to be a policeman. I want to be a, football player. How how did you end up becoming a hat artisan?
Yeah, so I studied graphic design in school. So what I wanted to do, like since I was a little kid, was just like I wanted to be an artist. And that idea had kind of like changed a lot as I got older or whatever. And it kind of moved from like, when you're real little, you're like, oh, artists have like funny mustaches and they wear berets and they like paint and
Right, yeah.
stuff like that. But I was super into skateboarding growing up, and that introduced me to all kinds of artists, and just like I would flip through the magazines and like just be enamored with like the board design and just graphics, like anything.
Sure.
Like graphics. And like when I got to high school, like about to go into college or whatever, I was like, they asked what I wanted to do, what I want to study in college, and I was like, I want to put pictures on skateboards. Like, what's that called? I had no idea what that was, and so the counselor, I'm from like a super small town in Upper Michigan. She was like, I don't know, like she put me in drafting classes. She was like,
right.
he wants to make skateboards or whatever. So I was just like, all right, just put me in art class and I'll figure it out. And then I went to, when I was going to college, they were like, what do you want to major in? And I was like, well, I want to put pictures on skateboards. What's that called? They're like graphic design. I was like, that's what I want to do. So
There you go. Yeah.
So anyways, like that's kind of like where I started, was just like I wanted to make graphics. Then I moved out to Portland after school, and I couldn't get anything going. It was like the height of the recession, and nobody was hiring, and especially not like a college kid with like college work and no
Sure.
experience and didn't know anybody. And
Yeah.
so from there I was just like, well, I have to do something, and I'm not going back home. And so I bought some like silk screening equipment. I was like trying to teach myself how to do leather goods, and I was doing sign painting and graphics, freelance,
Right.
and then I did a bunch of random shit. I worked for Stanley Steamer cleaning carpets, and
Yep.
just trying to get something going forever.
Sure.
And I was doing leather goods, and I was like selling antiques and restoring antiques.
Nice.
I worked in a friend's shop doing that, and then I had seen a picture of somebody who was getting a hat made,
Uh-huh.
and I was like, oh shit, like that's what those hat blocks are for. And I see those at antique stores, and I was like, I'm gonna make myself a hat. And I do that all the time, where I just see something and I'm like, oh shit, like that's what's up. I'm gonna do that.
Nice.
And I still do that, and I have to kind of like reel it in.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes, but but yeah, I just kind of got obsessed with it, and I was like, I'm gonna make a hat, and I just dove into it like super ignorant and like really didn't know anything about the hat world or hat
Right.
making world, and so I just kind of dove into it, and the first hat I made was like just really bad, and it was like I don't even remember where I got the felts, and
Right. Right.
I was just like, oh, this is like close to ribbon. I'll just use this shit,
Sure. Yeah.
and like I generally can pick stuff up and like be okay at it.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
that was like that really like kind of bothered me. I was like, this is hard,
Right.
and
It is. Yeah.
that's like, and it's hard even just to get information. It's hard to get anybody
Yeah.
to talk to you or whatever. And so like that was that's kind of that's how I got started, and that's what kept me really interested. I made my first hat, and then I made a couple more, just slowly
Yeah.
trying to get better, and they were just for me, and then
Mhm.
people started asking me where I got them, and I was like, well, I made them. They're like, so you're a hat maker? And I was like, no, not really. It's just like I did this, and it's
Mhm.
okay, and it's really not very good, and whatever. And then, but it was like at that point, it was like what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And my girlfriend kind of like pulled me aside one day and was like, "That's what you want to do, right?" I was like, "Yeah." It's
Yeah.
like, then tell people you're a hat maker. Like, if
Exactly.
they just told you that they liked it, then
Mhm.
yep.
Yep.
Like they don't know anything. You didn't know anything about the hat world, and neither do they. So
Yep. Yeah.
just go with it. And if you want to make more of them, then like take people's money and make more of them.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
And that's really like at that point, like that's what I did, and that was the start anyway. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. So it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong. Sorry, but it seems to me that there's really kind of a revival on hats right now, right? Like there was a relatively lengthy period that if you weren't watching a period piece movie, uh, you didn't see many hats. It was baseball hats, and it was bucket hats if you're out fishing or something. But otherwise, it was from the fedora Western hat crowd. Um, there was a lull there for quite a while, and now it seems like we're kind of back in that. And you've got guys, some of it, of course, is guys like Cam Newton, who's in the public eye, and Russell Westbrook, and people like that, and they're wearing hats, and they're going up in front of cameras, and they obviously reach a lot of people. But what do you think about that? What have you noticed that as well? Do you think that's something that's going on?
Yeah, so there's definitely like a resurgence at the moment. Like people always talk about like the hat industry definitely did die. Like you were talking about like at one point there's like Danbury, Connecticut, this little town in Danbury or in Connecticut.
Right.
They were producing over like 450 million hats a year out of Danbury. Like that's huge industry.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and you're talking about that kind of production before Henry Ford. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's like major. That's some major shit. Like they were.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were
Well, I
producing,
mean,
right?
I mean, at one point through the well, I mean, shoot, up until the late 50s, every male wore a hat. It
Yeah.
it might have been a it might have been a snap cap or a scally cap or a fedora. It might have been a western hat, whatever it was. But everybody wore a hat. Whereas and women tended to wear them more when they would go out to an event, to church, etc. But then we reached a period from the 60s, pretty much early 60s kind of started it. They funny enough, they even kind of chronicled it in Mad Men, right? Where where
Yeah, yeah.
where everybody was wearing hats for a while, and then everybody all of a sudden wasn't. But you know, and now we're in this period where you've got custom hat makers like yourself, kind of. I mean, there's a lot of you guys out there, which is awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing.
Well, and like my point earlier was like, you know, anything that started at that point is going, like, even a small decline is like pretty drastic decline there, you know. So
right.
But you know, people always say like, well, hats went out of fashion. Like, I don't think hats ever went out of fashion. Like, you look at like anybody cool that I looked up to growing up, like they wore hats.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Artists always wore hats. Musicians always wore hats. Like anybody who was like rad, you know, like they continued to wear them. You know, it was just like when you're talking about producing like 450 million hats a year out of like one little town, to the point where like in the 1960s and 70s, that definitely like the industry was hurting, and all the big guys bought the little guys, and you know, and then they went out of business because they couldn't run two companies, you know, and so like that continued to happen, and like it was definitely on the decline. And you know, then you had like little resurgences of like the Indiana Jones movie came out, and
big time.
bought hats, and
yeah, I remember that.
So there's a few like spikes in the industries, like over 80s and 90s era. Right now, you know, I think we're just like, this culture like looks back a lot. Like we have all the information for the first time. Like we can see every decade throughout U.S. history.
Oh yeah.
Now, you know, and that's readily available to us, like on our phones, you know. So like people aren't looking at Bob Dylan and being like, oh, that was out of fashion, you know, right? Like that's cool. Yeah. And it's cool that it was cool then, and it's like it's cool now. So like
absolutely.
Now that's like really like you know, I think we do that more like where we're making our own fashion trends, right?
Sure.
And I don't even like to say trend, but like I said, like I don't think like that part of it ever died out.
Yeah,
but
I think part of it for a long time was kind of comfort level. Like you can't look at Humphrey Bogart or Robert Mitchum and not say that guy can wear a hat. You know, yeah, he absolutely can. But I think a lot of people in the 70s and 80s and things like that, if they didn't grow up with it or they didn't have a dad wearing a hat, it felt like you were making some, you know, Herculean leap to all of a sudden start wearing a fedora around. And I'm not sure that's around anymore. And I think that kind of plays into, like, if you think about it, in cowboy culture, they've always worn hats. I mean, that, you know, forever. From
that's still like a majority of the industry is cowboy hats.
Sure, I'll bet. Yeah.
It's you know, it's a huge, that's always been a huge industry, and continued through all like the, you know, the waves. There's you know, that scene was always there, and but like the cowboy scene is still like, that's not popular. Like it goes through spurts where it's popular, but like those dudes are those dudes, right? Like the same way musicians are musicians and artists are artists, and like those subgenres are like what, you know, those are cool. Those are the cool people in the world, right?
Right.
When you get really into something, right?
But at the same time, it's steady, right? I mean, it's like you said, it's not a trend because they are who they are, right? So they're going to do it regardless, and that's, you know, that's kind of what makes it cool, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And so there was you know, there's a lot of things that led to the decline too. And you know, you just had, I think like people talk a lot about like Kennedy and the car, right? Like those changed the hat industry, and they totally did. But like the other thing that, like, this is my opinion, and I don't know, like, if anybody shares this or not, but like, the hats got bad. Like,
Okay.
you know, I have these old catalogs that like old like catalogs that went out to hat makers and hat
Sure.
industry people. They're like saved by the Library of Congress or whatever, so you can like look through these old ads that were for hatters, right? So
Right.
they talk a lot about World War One, World War Two, whereas like they were like, you know, thinner sweatbands to cut down on material costs, right? Like
Uh-huh.
uh, smaller ribbons, and then like, you know, everything shrunk. So like you had like the crowns got smaller, the brims got smaller, the sweatbands were like an inch thick,
Mm-hmm.
the ribbons were really, you know, and everything was kind of about like, um, you know, rationing, not rations, but like what do they call that? Like it's like war effort kind of.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's what it is. Yeah.
Like saving leather, like not using silk because that's for, you know, whatever
Yeah.
parachutes or, you
Yeah.
know, different shit like that.
Yeah. During World War II, they Levi's stopped stitching the Levi's symbol on the back pockets to
Yeah,
save thread. So yeah.
yeah. So there's a lot of that, and then when guys came back from the wars, they didn't want anything that felt like a uniform. They didn't want to
Sure.
be a part of their dad's generation. Like they didn't want to wear anything on their heads. They didn't. They were wearing helmets the whole time. You know, like they didn't want that. So, and then they got back, and like the style had changed to these like small,
Mm-hmm.
weird things that were no longer functional.
Yeah.
Like it was a style instead of like I wear this to keep the sun off my face.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. They went to those really like pork pies in the '60s, right? That the brim was tiny,
Yeah,
and it just kind of went around like this, and there wasn't even much of a crown either. It's just kind of yeah. No, I hear
and
you.
again, like that became the fashion for like you talk about stingy brims in Chicago, and that's still what everybody wants, right? Like
Nice.
because that was the whole jazz culture thing and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
different stuff. But like, um, yeah, so there's lots of things like that where it's like I think that industry kind of changed towards like fashion instead of function, and if you didn't like the fashion, then you didn't buy it,
Sure.
right?
No, that
And
makes
so
sense. Yeah.
I think there was just like a deep decline in those days. And, you know, obviously there was a lot of other stuff going around. Like kids totally rejected anything that looked like a suit and tie, right? Like,
Right. Oh, absolutely.
so, you know, getting into those times, like that was like the big decline. Um, but I think the resurgence thing is like super, it's cool. Like as a nation, we got more into craft in general,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Because you had all these kids like me that like went to college, thought we were getting jobs, and we didn't. So there was none, and then you know, you had to do something.
Yeah.
So
And,
people were starting to mark like, I make blue jeans now. I make
yeah.
boots. I
Yeah.
want to learn how to do this. Like you know, whatever.
And you found a way to become an entrepreneur on your own, and that's super cool.
Yeah, like you. I mean, I was always kind of into that route anyway. I wanted to work for a company, like, you know, like an agency or a skateboard company or something like that. And I like still that stuff's rad, um, but just wasn't in the cards. And so I had to do like it's like I can't. Nobody else is gonna pay me for this shit. I'm gonna do it. You know.
Exactly. Exactly. All right, man. So talk to me about you. I've seen pictures of your workshop. I haven't been up there. By the way, this is Folklore's in Portland. For anybody that doesn't know, so I haven't been up there because I'm down in Southern California. But the your workshop looks pretty cool, and
Yeah.
and you've got a lot of like a kind of a lo-fi vibe there with a lot of old vintage machines. And obviously, a part of hat making is very vintage anyway, because things like hat blocks and stuff like that, those are some of those are probably 50, 60 years old, but or more. But I know that you have a bunch of vintage kind of machinery around there too. So why don't you touch on that?
Yeah. Well, part of that is like, like I said, like part of what kept me so interested in this craft as opposed to anything else is like it kind of filled all of my interests. Like there aren't new machines for the hat industry.
Right.
There's like a few things, but like not really. Like this machine behind me here is like from 1915.
Nice.
So like that stuff I wasn't, I was buying it like I think it's cool. Like I would much rather, even if they made that new, I would much rather have the old one,
Sure. Yeah, totally.
But they don't make stuff new. So like that was part of the, like my aesthetic is old anyway.
Yeah, no.
But like finding the equipment and restoring stuff and like that's all part of like what that's like most of what I do. Like especially in the beginning was trying to find shit, So like
yeah.
So that part of it really held my interest too, and that hunt to find stuff is like I love that just as much as I do making hats. And putting a complete shop together out of nothing is like, that's super cool.
Heck yeah.
I'm kind of a steward of, like, there's a lot of hat makers right now getting into it, and like, I'm not gonna say like, I mean, a lot of them aren't good. Like, to be frank.
Hey, that's the.
I mean, I wasn't good, at the beginning. Like, I don't hold that against them or anything. Like,
and you know what? That's in every industry. In every industry, that's true. You can say that about anybody. You can say it about writers because I write. You can say about writers. You can say it about artists. I mean, look. There's that. They always refer to it as the 90% rule, right? Which is 90% of it is crap. I'm not saying 90% of hat makers crap. I'm just saying that's the rule when it comes to art is 90% of it is crap. 10% of it is awesome. And it's up to you to determine, what is and what isn't. But yeah, no, go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah, so there's like, there's the people that are getting into it because like they saw something that they thought was cool or whatever. And they're like, I can copy that and do that too. Right. And then there's people that are like, I'm a steward of this stuff. I'm a steward of this craft. Like, and that's really where I'm at is like, I want to learn all the nerdy shit about that machine back there. And I want to learn,
right.
I want to learn how to restore it all and get it all like, and save this stuff because like, I think about that all the time and it still happens. Like there's still companies that are scrapping these machines and stuff.
Oh,
like I've saved stuff from junk piles. Like,
yeah.
And so,
but see, look, the word you just used there, Steward, that tells you everything you need to know about how you look at the craft. Because when you are a steward, all you're doing is keeping something alive and trying to pass it on. That's the important aspect of what you're doing. You're not trying to recreate it. You're not trying to, recreate the wheel. You are taking something that's been done in the past, appreciating it, and trying to put your own mark on it. That's and pass it forward. That's beautiful. So
if I could take a bunch of junky machines and make them look beautiful and make them functional, and be able to pass my shop down to somebody else at the end of the day, like that's like that would be rad. And like I think
exactly.
I think that's kind of like where more people's heads need to be at, like is that
no disagreement here.
Part of my, obviously it's a business and you have to make money and there's all those things, but like I've spent a lot of money that I wish I didn't have to spend.
I'll bet.
just to save stuff,
Yeah.
Like I don't even know how much. I have thousands and thousands of yards of vintage ribbon, like, and nobody wants to spend 15 grand on ribbon, like it's not fun.
No.
But who knows what would happen to it if it just got dispersed in other ways.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's a big part of what I do, and a part that like most people don't really see either is like how much time you spend tracking
Oh, of
stuff.
course. Oh, of course. Yeah. So okay, so hook me up here. I'm gonna get the name wrong because I just made up a name for it and it's the wrong name. But you created this little like hat hook thing.
Yeah.
and it like hangs off the table. What is that? Because it seems kind of awesome.
Yeah, so it's a hat anchor, I call it.
Okay.
And me and I've had this idea for a long time. And like when you go to a restaurant, there's just like, back in the day, like you would go to a restaurant, you'd shed your coat, you'd shed your hat, and they would check it for you, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that doesn't happen anymore. So like,
No, and like every once in a while you'll go to those places where in between the booths they'll have like those little hat racks and you can but yeah, few and far between.
yeah, it's never really a good spot. It's good for a jacket, but it's always like you gotta
Right. Yeah.
there or whatever, right? And so my girlfriend used to own restaurants, and so we spent a lot of time in restaurants, and it was always a problem. Like you'd get friends that join you, and there's a bunch of food, and you don't have anywhere to put your hat.
Nowhere.
And
Yeah.
ends up in your lap, or it ends up, somebody ends up sitting on it or something,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I invented this. It's a brass disc. I'll just pull it out actually.
Sweet.
Yeah, hat anchor. There we go. And it unwinds like this, and then you can wrap this. This has like a little hook on it, and you wrap that around the hat, and then the weight of the brass ring lets it hang off the edge of a table. And yeah, that was an idea I had, and I collaborated with Huron Brassworks to make it.
Nice.
I really wanted to make more little products to go along with, getting a luxury hat, and like how to take care of it. And, so I've been really focused on doing stuff like that over the last couple of years. And Michael at Huron Brassworks, he really he made my design better, and it was like a real collaboration. And
that's awesome.
And he had a lot of ideas to bring to the table. And at first it started out as like kind of this bigger hook thing, and we just like got it more and more dialed and more minimal, and that was I'm really stoked on them. And it's like on the anchor it says a world's first. It was like I've never been anything like it, so that's cool. Cool. I feel I'm
that's
really
super cool.
Yeah,
that's super cool. Yeah, I totally dig that. Because yeah, you never know where to put your hat. You could wear it, but you're not really supposed to wear your hat when you're eating. But
yeah, I mean, there's just times where you don't want, pound some drinks and sweaty or what, you don't want to have something on your head all the time.
Exactly, or it's super hot in there, and everybody's sweating, and you're like, damn, So yeah, no, it's good. Okay, so real quick, just because we are Starlite Pulp, give me your favorite movie related to a subgenre of pulp. So we're talking Western, we're talking adventure, we're talking noir, we're talking horror, we're talking sci-fi.
Yeah, like There Will Be Blood is like one of my favorite movies of all time, and that was like the hat in that movie is great. There's lots of good hats in that movie.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I grew up like my dad was always watching westerns. Always liked uh, always liked looking at the hats, and I always wore hats as a kid. Like there was always a hat hanging on the wall somewhere, and
Mm-hmm.
I'd pull that down and wear it and whatever. And like I said, like there was a lot of I saw like a to my dad that was like a cowboy hat, but I was like
Right.
you know like I said, like that crosses a lot of genre. I was a punk kid. I
Yeah.
liked punk music, and I liked
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Flash. They were always wearing hats. Bob
Yep.
Dylan was wearing hats, and
Yep.
like
And,
artists, everybody. So like I would pull those down and wear them all the time, and
and
but yeah,
what's so funny, John, is that when you watch a lot of the real kind of, I I shudder to say realistic because who knows, but a lot of the kind of revisionist westerns, and say a series like Deadwood, for example, on HBO. And I'm not going to ask you anything from it, don't worry. But the point is that people all the way through the series they're in Deadwood, and it's the 1870s or whatever, and yet people are wearing every kind of hat imaginable. Like there's what you would refer as Western hats, right? But there's fedoras, there's bowlers, there's derbies, there's top hats. I mean, any hat you can imagine, and this is the West,
yeah,
and they're all wearing them. So
yeah.
it's
That
like
was that show in particular. Like that was really accurate in that way. Like you look at a lot of like Western movies, and it's just like this is a cowboy hat.
right, exactly.
Like,
Yeah, I know, totally. Yeah,
they're cowboys. They wear cowboy hats. Well, like,
right.
a lot of those guys were wearing bowlers, and everybody was. The West was a good mix of like
Oh yeah, of
crazy
everything.
cowboys, but also like people coming from the cities, and like
Absolutely,
it was
absolutely.
they still had their derbies and their city hats. They were
Yeah,
just dirtier,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, and you're talking, you're talking blacksmiths, and you're talking,
Yeah,
newspapermen, and you're talking, I mean, everybody, and they're not wearing cowboy hats. I mean, they're wearing a hat, but
yeah.
it's not a cowboy hat.
I always liked the gangster stuff too. Like I don't know of any movies in particular, but like I always liked period pieces.
Yeah,
Because I got so much information out of watching those. Like
no, I'm with you there.
I was always into fashion, so like I
Yeah,
always wanted to see what people were wearing, and like
absolutely. Yeah,
even movies just like probably doesn't fit in the pulp genre, but like Shawshank Redemption and
mm-hmm.
like stuff like that, where it was just like really well done, stuff like that. Like
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the fun of watching good historical period pieces in cinema, is that you get to see the hats, you get to see the outfits, you get to see all that stuff. And trust me, those people, the costume designers and the people that do the historical work, they spend a lot of time,
yeah.
trying to recreate that, and that's part of the fun of it. Absolutely. Yeah. Very cool.
I like a lot of the newer. Like newer, like the last 15, 20 years, I think there's been a lot of movies that like did a good job. Like in the past, it was like I said, like these are cowboys, and then these are gangsters, and
Yeah.
but there was that moment in time where there's like a lot of that crossed over.
Oh yeah.
Like that's the kind of stuff. Like that's the kind of time period I really like. Is like kind of when it was the end of the road for the cowboy stuff, and kind of like kind of the end of the road for the gangsters too.
Yeah,
like, couldn't really get away with that shit anymore. And like
there's
Assassination of Jesse James was a great movie.
Yeah, no, it is.
Great hats in that movie.
Yeah. There's a period from like I'm gonna say 1900, and I'm just making this shit up. I could be totally wrong. Well, not that wrong, but I could be off. But say 1900 to maybe 1890 to like 1920 to 30. In there, the hat period is really funky because it's a great period, but it's not traditional Western. and it's not traditional city. It's more a hybrid that you see a lot, which is super cool. I mean, you see a lot of pinch fronts and some ranch crowns, but you see the shorter brims, you see the longer brims on fedoras, and there's all these mixes that that like you said don't fit the stereotype, right, of gangster 1940. That it's not that stereotype, but it's still a great looking hat. And I think that and it's funny because it kind of slips through the cracks because it doesn't fit a category, right? We all want the category. We all want, like you said, cowboy hat. So, we're talking, and it goes up here and you boom. And it, it doesn't need to be that. So, hey, what, I'm just going to ask a funky little question here. What's the strangest request you've had as a hat maker?
Yeah, we didn't actually do this hat, but a guy I was talking to, and I made him a hat, but I made him like a more traditional kind of Western style hat. But the next hat, he had kind of like pitched the idea that he has a parrot, and he was like, what if the crown was like, I could keep my parrot in there, like some type of like cage or something. So that was probably like and we never made it. And I don't know how that would work, but yeah, that was probably the weirdest one, or like just the most unique one. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
I don't want to say it was weird because it would probably be cool, but
I mean, it's cool that he wanted to keep his parrot that close to him all the time. But boy,
yeah, yeah, that was a cool one.
All right. So one thing I want to pass along that I think says a lot about Mr. John Fish across from me here, and is about I don't know, a week or two ago. Like you guys know, I'm a hat nerd, so I was on eBay and I'm looking at all sorts of stuff, and I contacted John saying, "Hey, I just found one of your hats on eBay," and I thought it was really cool because I thought it told me a lot about John's character because he's a custom hat maker, and he takes a lot of time in his hats, and everything has to be everything's custom, right? So everything is exact, and it would be very easy for somebody in that situation to take the attitude of, what a dick, why is somebody selling my hat that they took all of this time to do. But instead his first reaction was, sweet, let's try to get it sold. And so I sent him the link, and within that day, the hat got sold. And his attitude was, look, if somebody's trying to sell the hat, they probably need the money, so let's help them out. And I thought that was super cool of you, honestly. Seriously, because you could have been like, what a douche, why is somebody trying to sell my hat? But instead you were like, let's help this dude out, and that's super cool.
To me also, like that kind of says, like, when people are in that position where like they have to sell something, like I don't know what it was that made him have to sell it or whatever, but like when you're in that position, you probably don't want to, and
safe to say, yeah.
But like what was cool is like he saw it as something of value, right? Like,
right.
It wasn't just something that he bought and was like, yeah, I'm over this or whatever. Like, they'll donate it to Goodwill or something.
Right.
Like he saw it as something of value and something that was precious, and I think that was really cool. And I'm glad that like my stuff has that value to people. Like, even if they have to get rid of it or whatever the situation is, like, and I also, like, I'm a buyer, like I'm an antique guy, and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
like
Me too.
seeing my hat on eBay next to a bunch of vintage Stetsons and stuff, that was cool. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
that
awesome.
says it's like it's something. It's something worth passing on to someone
Exactly.
else. Where
Exactly.
right?
That's it. And I mean, let's be honest. You know, as a writer, uh, that's all we really want to do, right? Is
Yeah,
create something that other people appreciate and that can be passed on.
yeah. Tell a story.
Yeah,
Keep a story going. Keep something alive. Right.
that's it, man. All right, so look, thanks so much for coming on tonight. So this is John Fish from thisisfolklore.com. Go to thisisfolklore.com, and he's also in Portland, Oregon. If you're up in that area, of course, give his shop a look. But you don't have to be in that area. You can hit him up online too. As for me, Brian, Starlite Pulp, obviously, we got merch and everything else on the site. If you guys, if writers out there, we only have submissions open for the first review for probably a few more weeks. So if you've got a short story, send it our way, and we will happily take a look at it. Obviously, go to starlightpulp.com. And otherwise, this has been a blast. Thank you, Mr. John Fish.
Yeah,
Appreciate
absolutely,
it.
man. Thanks for having me.
And we're out. Thanks for checking in, guys.
In this topsy-turvy